Welcome to EduRev.
Hi friends, good morning. This is Binu Krishna and I have considerable experience in dealing with the subjects of Indian geography, polity and art and culture for UPSC Civil Services examination. And let us have this lecture to be an introduction to the future lectures on art and culture. First of all, coming to this particular subject, art and culture is looked down upon by many students because it is a byproduct, it is very closely linked to history, which means there is a lot of facts to be remembered because of the single reason that this is not a science-based subject and there is not much of reasoning that could be done by the students, because of which there is a tendency amongst the students to neglect the subject. But let us try to make this as much interesting as possible because I'm going to add in a lot of drama, a lot of pictures, so that at least by seeing the pictures, by seeing the martial arts, by seeing the graphical movement of the dance forms, let the students try to imbibe the images, and at least by the images they can reproduce in the examinations. For example, let us say that you have a question about Chola temple architecture or the Chola structure of Nataraja statue. Let us try to break it down in the form of pictures. Let us have a lot of pictures so that you can recollect, if not the facts, at least if you can recollect the images. So I believe that there is a definitive science in which things can be recollected. So in this manner, let us try to make art and culture as much easier as possible so that students can try to recollect the facts. So that's number one. The second point that I have to stress about is that in order for you to remember and have a liking towards this particular subject, it is important that you have a natural liking towards the art and culture of India in general. Only if you try to appreciate your own culture, then you can reproduce it. You will try to learn more about it. Let us say that you have a particular dance form or a puppetry or something that you actually see in your day-to-day life, in your street or maybe across your place where you actually see that particular dance or puppetry. When you see them, when you develop a natural liking to them, that is when you can easily associate with that particular subject. So this is how you can interlink or you can connect easily with this particular subject, because this is not a reasoning based subject just like your geography or something where you can reason out the facts. It's not a science based subject, so generally you have to develop a natural liking to it. Another thing is you have to recollect the facts, you have to keep on revising it, which applies for any given subject. So with that as a quick introduction, let us actually look at the course outline. So broad classification of the static content of the subject is given here, and very important topics I would just list it down here, starting from architecture. Now architecture is wherein we'll be dealing with the IVC, which is the Indus Valley Civilization. We'll be dealing about Mauryan culture, Gupta architecture. We'll be moving on to down south, your Pandya Chola architecture and all of it, and very importantly the Mughal architecture. And then after that, something else that is very important is your religions of the world and the schools of Indian religious philosophy. That's again very, very important because Buddhism and Jainism, they are said to be some of the very important subjects, very interesting, and UPSC just loves those subjects. So that's again very important. Dance forms, theater, puppetry, and martial art forms. Like they are very closely interlinked. These four topics, let me remind you, they are very closely interlinked with one another. Like if you take some Chow dance form or martial art form, then you can actually interlink it with some other puppetry form or some other martial art forms and so on. So that's about that. And then we'll have a topic about Indian literature, Indian musical art forms, and you have a topic like UNESCO's heritage list. So this list, it comprises entirely of the static part alone, and Of course, there is this whole world of current affairs or the dynamic art forms. I'm sorry, the dynamic current affairs that you have to learn. That we'll be dealing with a separate subject or a separate topic. Now, I have chosen to focus only upon this because this is static content. No matter what changes, this is not going to change at all. So that is why I have focused upon this. So broadly, this will be the classification of the static content of this particular subject. Let us move forward. Yes, this is going to be an introduction lecture. So we'll start with what is culture, what is the importance of culture in human life, and what are the general characteristics of culture. That's it. We'll be just focusing on these three topics. Concept of culture. What is culture basically? So culture is nothing but it is a way of life, right? The food you eat, the language that you speak, the religion that you practice, the customs that is associated in your particular religion, everything that is surrounding your social environment forms under or falls under this aura of culture. So every society has its own culture, and this culture is said to be the embodiment of the way in which we think and with the way we do things. So humans, they need the culture in order to lead their day-to-day life. In fact, it is said that culture is what makes humans behave to be as human beings. Culture refers to a human-made environment which includes all the material and non-material products of life that are transmitted from one generation to the next. Let me break down this particular definition even a bit more. Material and non-material product. Material product is, suppose let us say that you have inherited, say, uh, anything, be it your religion, be it your language that you speak. These are non-material products, right? So this is getting inherited from generation to generation. And suppose let us say India as a whole, we have inherited Taj Mahal from the Mughals. So this is going to be a tangible product. This is a tangible, you can touch it, you can feel it. So this is a tangible or a materialistic cultural heritage. So you have material and non-material products of life, which proves to be or which forms the culture of the humans in general. And this culture, it gets transmitted from generation to generation. It varies from place to place. It varies from regions to region. It varies from countries to countries. So that's why we say that we share a very close cultural bondings with the other South Asian or the Southeast Asian neighbors of us, right? So that is because we have a close cultural linkages. Buddhism is shared. You can take many of the cuisines. The cuisines are very much similar. In fact, many of the languages, they have a very close linkages. So all this shows that this concept of culture has a common linkage to it. Is culture and civilization different? Now, there can be a normal misnomer that the word culture and civilization, they can be used interchangeably. That's not correct. That's definitely not correct. Why so? Because culture is the highest levels of inner refinement of a human being. I'll repeat it. It is the inner refinement, as in you try to push yourself as a human being, you try to attain the next levels of thinking. It's an inner process. If you try to learn a musical form, it's an inner process. It's not going to give you greater standards, right? It's for your inner enrichment that you are learning an art form. Yes, that may give you money at the end of the day for the musical performance, which is a different story. But being or involving in a cultural activity, it is more for the inner refinement. You, as a human being, try to become more and more cultured. It's a difference. Civilization, let's come to it. Now, civilization, it is better ways of living socially, politically, and better utilization of the nature. For this, try to think about the example of Indus Valley civilization or your Mesopotamian civilization or anything of that sort. Now, in IVC, as a community, they have a huge economical activity, As a community, they have high scientific development, they have better drainage system, they have better ground planning, so on and so forth, which shows that they are advanced as a society scientifically, economically, and also politically. There was some proof that there might have been a political division, though it's not been a factual thing, but of course there has been a centralizing tendency. So that's also true. So, is culture and civilization same? Of course not. It's actually quite different. So, what's the difference between them? Civilization means having better ways of living. As a human, you try to bend the nature, you try to make or bend the nature to fulfill the human needs. That's quite important. You're trying to make the nature bend to fulfill the human needs. Culture, on the other hand, it refers to the inner being. So you try to improve the arts and sciences and various higher pursuits of human life. That is nothing but culture. And here, as a civilization, you have politically well-defined groups. Try to think of IBC as an example. As a culture, some person who may be poor but still can be thought to be a very highly cultured individual. So that is again important. Some groups consider themselves as civilized and they look down upon others. Civilized groups, oh no, he is very poor, so he must be an uncivilized guy. That is actually a wrong thinking. Civilization, a wealthy person, he might be civilized, he might be living in a sophisticated bungalow and so on, but still he may be throwing abuses at a very low working person, someone who works under him. He may be throwing physical or verbal abuses. Can you call that person who is living in the sophisticated bungalow to be a cultured person? Definitely no. So, civilized, think about this, civilized does not mean cultured. So, someone who can be very poor may still be the most cultured individual on the planet. So, yes, that's a quick difference between culture and civilization. How is this going to be useful for your examination? Try to understand that there can be words that can crop up either in your ethics paper, GS4 paper, or even in GS1 paper as a general characteristics of culture. They can come or they can be a probability of a question. In that case, such intricate definitions, which is not found on your regular textbooks, may be very, very useful. So try to. So what do you mean by cultural heritage? That's the next topic that we have. So the culture we inherit from our predecessors, that is called our cultural heritage. Coming to think of it, culture gets transmitted. Try to remember that culture is a historical process. It gets transmitted from our ancestors, and with passage of time, there can be some experiences which can be added to it and some which is not considered to be that important, which cannot be followed by the present day generation, that will be neglected, that will be thrown away. So cultural heritage, it's a evolutionary tendency. You try to get it from your ancestor. It is acquired, it is learned and acquired from the ancestors. Try to remember that. And national cultural heritage, that word is again important. It means that nation also in some way they inherit the cultural heritage. Like for example, architectural creations, your Taj Mahal. There can be certain intellectual achievements, like for example, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. So that is one thing that we have inherited. Yoga is a very important cultural aspect that we have inherited as a nation from our ancestors. Similarly, you can take about scientific discoveries. You can take Aryabhata's contribution towards mathematics. You can take Bhaskaracharya's contribution towards the gravitational laws and so on. And similarly, for philosophical knowledge also, you can quote considerable experiences. So that's again very important. So this is the crux behind cultural heritage. What is cultural heritage? Culture can undergo a change, but remember, your heritage cannot, because whatever you have inherited is inherited. That's the final stage. You give changes to it, right? You keep making changes to it, which means culture can change, But can it mean whatever you have inherited, can it change? Definitely no. Whatever you have inherited, yes, that is still in place, but you choose to avoid it. That's important. You choose to avoid it. That is why culture is liable to change, but our heritage does not. What are the general characteristics of culture? There are some 8 points. Try to remember that. Culture is learned and acquired. Like whatever the child, try to remember this picture. Whatever as a child, this kid tries to remember or this kid tries to follow, that is actually learned and acquired from their ancestors, from her elders. So this is a learned and a process. You, like for example, the color of your skin, your hair color, your eyelids, your eyebrow color. So these are some things that you inherit as a form of genetics from your ancestors. But culture, you borrow it, you learn it, you acquire it from your surroundings, from your parents, from your friends, from your neighbors. So it's from the general community, from the general society, you try to learn it. So second point is culture is shared by a group of people. Suppose let us say that you and me try to bring about a new cultural practice. Just you and me, the two of us. We try to bring about a cultural practice. Do you think it will become a cultural practice in the generations to come? Definitely no. So what is necessary? A thought or an action, it may be called as a culture only if it is getting shared, believed, and practiced by a group of individuals. So culture needs to be shared by a group of people for it to be practiced in the generations after generations. That's again important. The third point is culture is cumulative, meaning your elders have passed on a baggage of culture. Let us imagine culture to be a big bag. So your ancestors, your parents might have given you that this bag is our culture. Now, what you'll do is the present day generation, they might get attracted to something else and they will also add it as a part of their own culture. For example, the South Indian marriages, they have increasingly borrowed certain cultural aspects of the North Indian marriages. So there is a new addition that is taking place, right? This is why we say that when things are getting added to the existing volume of culture, then a new culture is born and the culture becomes a cumulative culture. It gets added. Try to remember that. Culture changes, of course, it is true. Because culture is highly dynamic, my dear friends. It keeps on changing. And there is knowledge, thoughts, or traditions that are getting lost. Of course, you consider certain superstitious practices or old rituals or customs that can no more be followed. You try to throw it out, right? So, culture obviously undergo a change. And because of the introduction of the present day social media like WhatsApp, Instagram, and so on, there is a natural tendency for culture to get eroded in a quick pace of time. Culture is highly dynamic. Following that, uh, culture gets modified. What has been practiced then, look at the picture, what has been practiced then has now undergone a change. Though we still follow the traditional attire, we use it only for some traditional customs, some traditional festivals. On the regular wear, for a regular formal wear, we choose something different. So that is how culture keeps on changing. Culture is very dynamic. It keeps on changing constantly as new ideas and new techniques are added, modifying the old ways. Culture is highly diverse and there is a system of interdependent parts like culture has got music, culture has got language, and it has got some ethical values attached to it. So all these independent parts, they join together and they form a holistic body which is called as culture. So there is some independent parts, they become mutually interdependent to form what is known as culture. And culture gives us a permissible behavioral patterns. Culture is ideational, meaning culture says that when you actually see an elder, you have to bow to them, you have to hold it and you have to tell them namaskar. So this is a form of culture, namaskar or namaskaram. So this is a culture. So they say that this is the ideal pattern of behavior. So it says that you should not be going on hitting another person. You should not slap or throw any physical abuses to another person. So it says that these are the ways in which humans ought to behave. They give a set of ethical values. Culture gives us a set of normative behavioral patterns. So permissible behavior patterns or ideal behavior patterns is given out by culture. So these are the broad general 8 characteristics of culture, and if some question comes with regard to give out the specific characteristics of Indian culture or give out the importance of culture in human life, you can quote these kind of examples, modifying them a little. So yes, that might be useful for you. Importance of culture in human life. Culture is what makes humans to behave like humans. Human beings are creators of culture, and at the same time culture is what makes us human. It is very closely linked to human life, and it gives a meaning to lead our life. And it is this culture that brings us closer to the philosophy and religion of us. Now, the three eternal and the universal values in India, which are truth, goodness, and beauty, that is again to be followed in our general life. This quote that we have here, it is not just a Hinduistic way of philosophy, rather, it is the basic binding of the Indian way of life. Because forget this values of Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. There's also one more point that I have to add here. This quote of Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram is important even from your examination point of view, because this is the motto of Doordarshan. So the three eternal values and the universal values followed in India are that follow the truthful path, because this is the same thing that is told in Buddhism as well. Follow the truthful path to attain the ultimate truth, to attain the ultimate good, which is God, and finally try to see what is the real beauty of life. So that is the eternal values of India. And coming to the examination point of view, there can be certain codes, there can be certain institution, and there can be certain codes which can come up in the examination. Why so? Because try to understand this code, Satyameva Jayate. It was asked in the previous prelims paper that Satyameva Jayate, the code which is found in the national emblem of India, is found in which Upanishad? So that took a lot of students in surprise, because it's not that easily found in your regular textbooks. So Satyameva Jayate is actually found in Mundaka Upanishad. So try to remember certain very important codes. So Supreme Court's code would be Yato Dharmasya Tatho Jeha. LSAs would be Yogakshema Mahamaham and Doordarshan. And similarly, something that is very important, which is coming up very recently in the news articles, is Sabarimala Temple and Tatvamsi. That's again important. Tatvamsi is actually found in the Chandogya Upanishad. So that's again important. Chandogya Upanishad, Tatvamsi, and which means you are that which you think, you are that which you seek. And similarly, there are some other famous quotes which have been propounded by, or which have been repeatedly used by our Prime Minister Modi, which is nothing but the Vasudeva Kudumbakam. That's again very important. Vasudeva Kudumbakam. Yes, coming to it, the whole world is one family. That is found in Maha Upanishad. It is also getting a mention in Hitopadesha. Similarly, you also have another quote which is Atithi Devo Bhava. In fact, you have the Atithi Devo Bhava campaign in Indian tourism. So Ministry of Tourism runs this campaign also. So try to remember that. So that is why when you put, another thing is, please try to remember this key point. When you put these kind of codes in your ethics paper or in your essay paper, it further adds value to your answer. So yes, that concludes the lecture for the day. There is a lot of over 10,000 plus questions that is found in our EduRev Infinity platform, which is prepared by the UPSC experts, which is made according to the level of UPSC. Try to follow all of that and follow the art and culture lessons. In the next module, we'll be having an interesting lesson on IBC. Thank you so much and have a nice day.